Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Mpowered Living. I'm your host, Sheu, and today, Dr. Carrie Johansson is back on the show, and honestly, I could not be more excited. If you caught our last conversation, you know why. Dr. Carrie is a psychologist, speaker, and consultant, and she has this incredible gift for taking the way we think about emotions and just flipping it in the best way possible. Today, we're getting into something that I think many of us need to hear. Why your feelings matter, but why they aren't meant to run the show. Dr. Carrie walks us through how to tell the difference between actually processing an emotion and just spinning in it. And she shares her framework that helps you get out of your reactive brain, and she shares the one question that helps you move forward. We also talk about how to teach these skills to our kids, which, if you're a parent, you're going to want to stick around for. This one's practical and grounding. Let's dive in. Dr. Carrie, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have you back today.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited to be here. We just have such a lovely conversation last time. I'm really looking forward to today.
I know, it was definitely one of my favorites. So I have so much I want to cover with you. Let's dive in. I know that you have talked about in the past about how important it is to just marinate in feelings and how that can sometimes keep us stuck. And that feelings actually give us information, but that action is really the key to moving forward through that. So can you talk a little bit about that and what it means to marinate in feelings and why that can not really be the best thing?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that you bring this up because right now I feel like we are increasingly encouraged to be just hanging out in our feelings. And we have been kind of sold a bill of goods that is not true, which is that if we feel something strongly, that means that we should follow that emotion blindly. And it couldn't be farther than the truth. Feelings are there. They're important. Don't get me wrong. Feelings are there to give us information. What we do next, we actually want to run through our thinking portion of our brain, not just our emotional reactivity portion of our brain. Part of how we want to decide what we do next is actually to make a decision and a choice instead of just have an emotion and do it whatever the emotion tells us.
How can you tell the difference between like processing that emotion and actually getting stuck in it? So like the difference between like reflecting versus when it becomes unhealthy and it's like in this rumination stage.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that you can tell is how your body feels. So we tend to embody our feelings, which means that if we are angry, you'll see it in somebody's jaw will get really tense all of a sudden, or their fists will ball up, or they'll like end up with an aggressive and kind of forward posture. Everything in that nonverbal communication that other people can see and you can feel means that anger is the thing that's in charge. Right? When we're in our thinking brains, we tend to be, even if we're upset, we tend to be a little bit set back and we can more calmly move forward. So the first step is really to notice where is a feeling showing up in your body and to notice that first. And then also one of the most interesting things about emotions is that the physiological impact of a strong emotional reaction actually only from a neurochemical standpoint lasts about, or physiological standpoint, only lasts about 90 seconds. And much more than that, we tend to be actually adding on to the feeling by attaching a story to it. So let's say you're at, I don't know, the convenience store, right? And you're picking up a cup of coffee and the person behind the counter drops the coffee, right? And you are having a particularly crummy day, so you kind of overreact anyway. First of all, you're probably surprised. And then you're upset, right? You've lost your morning coffee. This is a crisis. And then a story gets attached. I can't believe this happened. I needed that coffee. I really need coffee in the morning. I can't believe this person was so clumsy. All of those thoughts are actually attaching to that emotion and are helping fuel it and keep it going. When you're in a calmer, more reasonable version of yourself, the coffee spills, you have an initial surprise. You may even have an initial, like, oh, man, now they have to make a whole fresh pot. That was the last cup. I'm kind of bummed. And then you can take a breath and just be like, well, I can either wait for the fresh pot or I can go somewhere else. But if you notice in that, that's a solution and an action oriented response instead of an emotive response that's then tied to keeping you upset and riled up. It's a silly example, but I
Mhm.
figure just about anybody can relate to that example.
Yeah, no, that's great. So when you gave that example, example A, they're reacting, example B, they're in their thinking brain. What does it take to be more in our thinking brain and react with that second scenario?
So the first part of that is to actually understand where you feel different emotions. So, where, for example, like if you're feeling anxious about something, how do you know? How do you know that you're anxious? Where does it show up in your body? Most people either get like butterflies or their chest gets tight or they feel sort of racy, right? Where do you feel it?
Yeah, in my I feel it in my chest.
In your chest, right? And so the first step is to notice that your body doesn't feel calm, right? To notice that you don't feel calm and then to go and look to see if there's a label that goes with that emotion. And once we label our emotions, this is really cool. So once we label our emotions, so let's imagine that this is just sort of baseline, right? If we're having, so, and I will just say technically all emotions are just emotions. They aren't actually good or bad, positive or negative. And we all know that there's some emotions that we enjoy having and we'd like to have more often. And there's some emotions that we don't love so much and we would rather not have, right? Like, so we can sort of stipulate this is true. But if you imagine that this is sort of just baseline, right? You're just calm, content, whatever. If we have something that happens that we feel happy about and we label that and name how happy it makes us, it tends to actually double that experience of happiness. It makes it more sticky, which is awesome. Let's say something happens that we feel really angry about and we are super upset about it. When we're just looping in it, I can't believe that happened. I'm so mad, blah, 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 right? And you're really digging into it, that actually increases and digs in the emotion, brings it deeper and deeper and deeper. If we can slow down and just say, oh, that made me really angry, that halves the negative emotion. And then that helps put us into our thinking brains, which then gives us the opportunity to decide what we would like to do about it next.
What would you say about the people who feel like they need to fully process and fully understand their feelings before they can move forward?
Most of the time at this point, I think it's really pretty overblown. So, on the one hand, I'm a psychologist. I work with people's feelings all the time. I work with my own feelings all the time. They are important. But at this point, I feel like as a kind of cultural narrative, we are encouraging people to be upset and stay upset. And then we're giving them permission to stay upset by saying how incredibly important their feelings are and how incredibly special their feelings are. And that is actually just kind of helping us stay marinating. And what I would encourage instead is to notice your feelings, label your feelings, and then start investigating what information are they trying to give me? And then what would I like to do about it? So it isn't just outrage for outrage's sake. And I feel like at this point, sometimes people's outrage is a little bit almost performative, right? Like,
Mm,
I'm mad and I'm going to show everybody I'm mad
mhm.
instead of like, wow, I'm really mad. Here is what I'm going to do about it. Or I'm really upset about this. And then to actually acknowledge I'm really upset about this. And there isn't a thing I can do about it except calm myself down, right? Or
Yeah.
accept that this is what is going on in the world. That level of acceptance.
Mm.
Acceptance does not mean approval, it just means acknowledging what is real. And
Yeah.
that's very different than just being upset. How does that sound to you?
Yeah. And I guess my question is, what if somebody has been, like the word you used earlier, performing, right? Those feelings for so long that it's become a habit and they can't differentiate between the actual feeling and what they might be doing just out of habit.
Yep. And so I think step one is going back and asking yourself, how long has this feeling been going on? Because if it's longer than a couple of minutes, it probably means that you are helping it stay around or that you're still in the middle of something that is really difficult, right? So, gosh, what's a good example? Let's say you're at a company and your company is in the middle of layoffs. The likelihood that you're going to feel super comfortable is like 0%, right? And at the same time, staying in anxiety all day long every day is also not very skillful, right? It's normal, it's reasonable, it's probably even to be expected, but it's not actually very helpful. And so for you in that, let's say you're in this ongoing situation where you know they're doing layoffs and you aren't sure where you stand. You're going to feel nervous and riled up. That's a really reasonable reaction. And if all of your energy is going to that, that means that you're probably not going to get anything else done at work, right? And then suddenly you're going to be less productive. And paradoxically, then you're going to be less valuable to the company, which is not going to be in your favor, right? So, what we want to do is we want to notice, like, okay, layoffs are happening. I don't know where my job is. Big, deep breath. Whew, that feels really bad. Okay, right? And notice that and let yourself really deeply notice it. And then your next question is, what are my options here? And from there, then we want to move into action, even if the action is just putting your head down and doing your work. Maybe it looks like asking your manager a question. And maybe the question isn't, what's happening with my job, right? Because that's an anxiety driven question. But instead would be to say to your manager, is there anything that I should know this week about the layoffs and my job?
Mm.
Because then that puts you back into workability instead of just upset. And once you're in workability, then you have many more options to move forward, which is a lot more fun than just sitting at your desk feeling anxious.
Yeah, it's like that question that you talked about in the last episode around like what's my next best move and
Yeah.
really thinking about how to move forward from that feeling.
Yep, exactly. And again, if you go back to that notion that feelings give us information, they are valuable. So the answer to this sort of over emotive place that we've kind of gotten to is from a cultural, I'm calling this a cultural perspective, particularly, I think, in the United States. And some of that is driven by forces well outside of our control. I mean, if, for example, you watch a news broadcast on either end of the political spectrum, there are several aspects to that that are designed on purpose. This is super gross. They're designed on purpose to get our population upset, divided, and spinning in outrage with very little traction.
Mm.
This is actually really disgusting and manipulative, and yet it
Mm.
is so, right? So there are forces outside of us that are making that occur. Little things like if you watch TV, it's interesting. For a while we got to TV where there weren't really ads, but now even on the streaming platforms, there's ads. The vast majority of ads, if you just ran a background ticker of fear, 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 that would actually sum up the entire commercial,
Yeah.
right? Be afraid you need this medicine. Be afraid of
Mhm.
this burglar. You need this home security system. Be
Mm.
afraid of this health issue. You should be doing this instead. Be afraid that you look like this. You should take this drug, right? Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. Fear, right?
Mhm.
So it's not really, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves that we're in this place. And at the same time, if we can start noticing it and start noticing when something outside of ourselves is inviting us to be upset for a reason that does not benefit us and in a way that we have very limited power and agency to control, that's probably something that you want to minimize exposure to or change how you expose yourself to it.
So, what can someone do to properly navigate these situations? I know that you have some tips that you have shared around mental fitness. Can you talk a little bit about some of those best practices there?
Absolutely. So, and we've touched on some of it already today, but I call it the 3 A's of mental fitness, which it's a little formula. I don't know about your brain, but my brain likes little formulas, right? Because it gives me something to hang on to, especially if I'm riled up about something. Being able to go back to a concrete formula is kind of helpful. But the 3 A's of mental fitness are accept, assess, and act. So there is a bias towards action in this approach, and it's a little bit more cognitive than emotive. So what that means is it's going to be something that at the end of the day, we want to move towards skillful action, and we want to move away from that marinating in our feelings. We want to notice our feelings. We want to work with them, but we don't actually want them to be in charge. The first A is accept. And what that is it's looking at what is really going on right now. And it doesn't mean that it's positive or negative. And in fact, one of the things that's really interesting and a great exercise to get people started is to do what I call the positive, negative, and neutral exercise. So this will take like 30 seconds. Are you game to play with me?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So in just about every moment, we are actually getting positive, negative, and neutral input, right? So if we do this right now, positive, I'm talking to you. This is so fun, right? I love. Negative, there's traffic noise out my window that's kind of repetitive and it's a little bit loud today. Neutral, it is actually a good temperature right now in my office, which I suppose is sort of leaning towards the positive. But positive, negative, and neutral in this moment, right? Which puts us into our bodies, into the present moment. Those are two very helpful things that you have at your disposal just about any minute of any day. Is like, hang on, time out. What's actually positive, negative, and neutral right now? And then you can take a look at, like, from there, build out to that overarching acceptance. What really is happening right now? Doesn't mean you approve of it. I think people confuse acceptance with approval. Like, I can't accept that. That's totally inappropriate, or I can't accept that. It's the worst thing ever. And it's like, well, actually, acceptance just means that you're saying, yes, this is happening. So that's A, number one.
So it's like an acknowledgement.
Exactly. And it's looking around, right? Because we'll get in our heads, especially when we're really stressed about something. And it's almost like we get tunnel vision. And the only thing we can see is this one little tiny thing that we're really upset about. And so we want to kind of bring up the house lights. What else is going on? What else is positive, negative, or neutral right now in this moment?
Love that.
Yeah. Kicks us out of our threat response brain back into our thinking brain. This is where we want to be making moves from.
Great. So accept,
So
assess.
A, number 2 is assess. So assess is where it's very different than how we normally react. So how we normally react is that we judge things as either positive or negative, good or bad, what I want or what I don't want, right? And when we're in an assessment mode instead of a judgment mode, we actually shift that languaging just a little bit. And so we want to be looking less at what's good or bad and more at what's workable and less workable, or what's entertaining or frustrating. What's, like, you sort of want to, like, tease out a little bit more complexity. If we go back to the layoff situation, if you're in acceptance, like right now, my company is in trouble and we are doing layoffs and I don't know where my job security lies. Okay. Assess. Is there anything I can do right now about this? What would be the best and the worst outcomes of of if I got laid off or if I stayed. What's the most workable thing about this? How could this possibly benefit something, be a benefit that I can't even see right now because I'm so worried about my job, right? It just sort of makes you're teasing out nuance. And then from there, then it's easier to go into step 3, which is action. And action is my favorite question. What's my next best move?
So on assess, you said the first question you kind of talked about was, what was the question that you asked? It was like,
I talk a lot about what's workable, right?
what's workable?
What's
Yes.
workable, what's skillful. Like it's just different languaging than good
Yeah.
and bad. Good and bad kind of traps you into 2 buckets. Workable's a little bit more complex than that, or skillful's more complex.
Mm. And do you find that what's workable puts people into a more positive or negative mindset? Because I'm curious, if you were to ask me what's workable, I might tell you what is actually workable, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about all the things that are not workable.
Well, and that's why you actually want to take a look at both. What's
Mm.
workable here? What's not workable here? So we're recording this today. It was Mother's Day yesterday, right? Which Mother's Day can be really wonderful. I hope you had a nice one. And Mother's Day for folks who have lost their moms or who have really difficult moms or they have a difficult relationship with their children, all of those can make Mother's Day really difficult, right? And let's say you got a crummy text from your kid on Mother's Day. Your most workable thing might actually be to do nothing at all, right? Or to try and soothe yourself in some other way, right? Than trying to figure things out with them. But it's interesting because sometimes our brains want us to do the thing that isn't probably the best. I'm going to show them, I'm going to tell them, right? You fire back some gnarly text, right? To the text that you didn't like. And first of all, like this is probably why texting shouldn't be our primary mechanism of communication. But second of all, like sometimes we know that what we're doing isn't workable, but we do it anyway. We're tempted to do it anyway, which is where we sort of want to take a look at the various options you have. And then that what's my next best move is different than what's the move I feel like doing right now when I'm this upset.
Yeah, and I would say for me, like sometimes I can see myself doing the thing that I shouldn't be doing, and I just cannot stop.
You and me both. This
Like,
is human.
I'm thinking about it, I'm, like, assessing and reflecting in the moment, and I'm like, "What is wrong with me? Why can't I just stop? Just stop talking, stop whatever I'm
Uh-huh.
doing."
And so that's the entertaining time when you have taken an action, right? But then we want to actually head back into assessment. Did this work? Is it making us feel better? Is it moving us closer to a solution? Is it effective? And if the answer is no, but I'm doing it anyway, then that means that you've probably actually missed an emotion. And then if you can go back and take a look at the emotion and figure out what is the information the emotion is trying to give you. I had a big presentation recently, and what they were asking for was a little bit different than what we had signed up for, which is
Mm.
fine. Totally fine. And I wasn't sure how to do a really fabulous job with what they asked for. And I was nervous, frankly. And I don't really get nervous speaking anymore. For some reason, I'm weird and I think public speaking is super fun and I don't care how big of a group it is and it's all very peculiar. I help so many people get over a fear of public speaking and I think it's very odd I don't have one. I'm afraid of very strange things like a flat iron straightening my hair, terrifying to me. It makes no sense. My hairdresser is like cracking up anytime he works on my hair. He's like, I'm not going to burn you. And I'm like, are you sure? Right? Oh, like tell me I'm going to speak to 500 people. And I'm like, that sounds like fun. But I was nervous this time and I was trying to write the presentation. And instead of writing the presentation, I was cleaning my kitchen. I was taking care of my files at work. I was snacking too much. I was wandering around my house looking for laundry, right? Like I was doing just about anything except for what I needed to be doing. And so a little bit of that, really give myself a little bit of rope on that for a little while. And then it's like, okay, stop, right? Notice what's going on right now.
Mm.
You're nervous. Why are you nervous? Well, I'm nervous because I want to do a really good job. Okay. So, what would you need to do a really good job? Write the presentation. Okay. Why can't you seem to do that? Because you're not sure what your central message is.
Mm,
How about we sit down and do some writing and figure out what your central message is? Then you're going to be able to write the presentation. Then you can stop visiting the kitchen and stop scrubbing the house, and you can actually sit down and write the presentation. And it was really fascinating because once I sat down and again acknowledged I was nervous, cuts it in half. Right? When I'm just procrastinating and spinning around and feeling nervous and not labeling it, you get spun out, or at least I do.
mm,
And as soon as I was able to stop and acknowledge, right, accept, oh, you're doing poorly right now. What's going on? You're procrastinating. You're procrastinating because you're nervous. Label the emotion, let it cut in half. Okay, now see, what is the emotion trying to tell me, right? And now once I find that out, what the heck do I want to do about it? Oh, okay, here's what I can do about it.
Could you give another example, but one where the reaction was much quicker? Like when you snap at somebody, or, because you in your example, I love this example that you just shared because of the procrastination, and we're able to kind of see what that looks like. But I feel like in that example, there's some time to reflect and like, oh, what happened and why am I feeling this way? But for me, a lot of times it's like I'm in the moment and then something happened and then I'm snapping and then now this whole situation has devolved and somebody's crying and
Do you have a specific? I can do a general one, but if you have a
sure,
specific, we can play with a specific.
sure. Which one do you want to pull from? So, how about this one? Over the weekend, I was working on a project, like a crafty project that was very sentimental. And I had it sitting on the floor in my room. And I told my kids to not touch it. And of
They touch it.
course, one of the kids picked it up and was kind of, messed it up a little bit. And I snapped and I was like, I told you not to touch it. And then in that moment, now I'm like, well, they need to learn, they need to know not to touch my stuff after I say it. So then I kind of feel like I'm, and I had to go back. I did go back later and apologize, but in that moment, like I'm like yelling, I'm snapping at that poor child, and I'm like, what am I doing? I know I should stop. They're a kid. They don't know better, and yet the words are still coming out of my mouth.
Yes. So there's a reason for this. And some of this, unfortunately, this is not going to be your favorite answer, I don't think. Sometimes we're going to snap because we're human and that's how we're
Yeah.
designed, right? And when something is really important to us, and I know that you and I have talked and had really lovely conversations about the importance of values, right? And my guess is that this project was stepping on a value for you,
Mm,
right? So then when that value is disrespected,
mhm,
so that notion of snapping in the moment, it is going to happen sometimes. If you can catch yourself as soon as possible, that's awesome. And if you can set up sort of a rule or a principle beforehand, that can also be helpful. But in the moment, on Saturday, when your kiddo broke your project, really your best hope is to just catch it quickly.
mm,
It isn't to expect yourself to never react strongly because we're going to react strongly, right? But as soon as we notice that we're reacting strongly, that is when, like, how can we take a breath, get in our bodies? And I don't mean a deep breath, right? When we're upset, we'll often tell someone to calm down. Never in the history of someone calming down has it occurred when someone has told them under duress that they need to calm down.
that doesn't work for you. I mean, my husband does it to me all the time.
Can you just calm down? Like, I can go in the opposite direction though if you ask me again. And then at least for me, I use the visual. I'm a pretty visual person. I use the visual of like getting my feet back underneath me. So noticing when I snap and then trying to pull it back as quickly as possible.
Mm, yeah.
It was funny when my daughter was young, she's now almost 21. It is crazy that she's almost 21. But when she was little, there were only about 3 rules in my house. And it was interesting because her friends would come over and I could hear them like if a new friend came over and there was a friend who'd been there before, you could hear the kids telling the new kid what the rules were. And the rules were number 1, please take your shoes off before you go upstairs, because Carrie was so silly and put white carpet in her house. Dumb. It was beautiful. It was like white, but like with speckles. And I just didn't even, anyway. Yep. So rule number 1 was please take your shoes off before you go upstairs. Rule number 2 was anything that you took out, you needed to be willing to clean up and pick up. Right. So like anything you took out. And mine was the house where you could do things like make slime during the grand slime era of age 8 to 10. I don't know if slime is still a thing, but it was remarkable. And you're working with stuff like borax, like it was nuts. The other moms were like, I cannot believe you let the kids make slime. But make slime at my house as long as you know, like followed the rules and cleaned it up. But the third rule was kind of the most important. And interestingly, it was actually phrased in the negative, which is very rare. Like, really, we want to be telling kids what we do want them to be doing, not what we don't want them to be doing. But my third rule actually was in the negative, which was don't be mean on purpose. And what that translated to in my house was if you broke something on accident, no problem. But if you broke something, especially after you'd been asked to be careful with it, we were going to have a problem. And if you broke something on purpose because you were mad or because you were trying to be unkind, that was really, really a problem in my house. And so some of it is that notion of like, you can be tempted to snap, but if it was an accident, my guess is your values system would be like, no problem. My guess is that part of the reason that this felt so crummy on Saturday was that you had actually asked, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so a piece of the conversation afterwards will be number 1 with yourself of like, instead of telling them not to touch it, maybe next time I'll say, please be extra careful with this. This is
Mm.
really important to me. So you're using your value to guide behavior in someone else. But sometimes people walk right through what's important to us. And that's actually really interesting. And it's unlikely that we're going to be totally non-reactive in that scenario. But the more clear you are with your values and the more clear of how you want to conduct yourself and how you want to react, the better able you'll be to do that. How's that land for you?
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, so can we just talk a little bit about how parents can teach this to their kids? Because I think it's so important to learn. It's something I'm still trying to teach myself, but I definitely want to teach it to my kids. So, what is your suggestion on where to start?
So some of it is to start talking to them about acceptance. So lots of times our kids will come home and we will actually fuel their upset, right? Like we'll take that 90-second physiological reaction and we will help them keep it going, right? Like, I can't believe they did that. You know, that's so awful, right? And we get all riled up. And then the next thing you know, we're both all riled up. And so the first question is like, okay, so tell me what happened.
Mm,
And if you have your feet underneath you and you're in a grounded place while you're talking to them about it, then you can help them get to some acceptance. And then you can do that assessment with them. Obviously, maybe the word workable isn't quite the right word to use with a little one, but to talk about like, well, what do you want to do about this? And asking, how do you feel? Teach them to label their emotions. And with littles, you just start with the top 3, mad, glad, or sad. Do you feel mad, glad, or sad right now?
mm,
And when they get a little older, then you can talk about fear. You could talk about, disgust or negative surprise, right? But the older they get, the more nuanced the emotions can get. So it's also that notion of talking to them about emotions, starting that labeling process early. And then from there, doing that assessment of like, what's the information this is telling me? Because sometimes what it will tell you is like, I don't actually want to be friends with this person anymore. That's okay. Friendships end. That's actually part of that acceptance thing. Sometimes friendships change. I have a lot of clients right now who have kids who are in middle school and they're in that sort of social tussle of middle school where friends that you counted on in elementary school have really changed or the group has changed. What's cool has changed and people can sometimes really feel left out. And so it's acknowledging like, yeah, this is really crummy. And And this is a stage, like, this is part of it.
It's great. I love that. You up for some rapid fire questions? Okay. Thank you for sharing all that, by the way. That's super powerful. I'm gonna implement some of that with my kids. Rapid fire. So one thing you've stopped doing that has made a big difference in your life.
Probably the biggest thing that I stopped doing, this is a long time ago, when I was 26, I changed my relationship with alcohol, and
Mm,
I changed to never having more than 1 drink.
mm.
And really, at this point, I drink very rarely, but that 1 drink piece just made all the difference in the world, and it's been a really long time.
Yeah, that's great. What's one book that you've read that's had an incredible impact on your life?
Oh my gosh, so many. I love to read. A book that I actually just read that was really fun and we're doing as a high school. 4 friends and I from high school have started a book club, and we are reading The Correspondent as our first book. And there's pros and cons to this book, but it's really quite lovely. It's a book told in letters, and it has inspired us before we've even done our book discussion to start. I started by writing a letter to the group, and then the group members are writing back. And it's just been a really sweet implementation of the book.
That's sweet. I love that so much. What's a habit that's changed your life?
Exercise, hands down, is the best mood stabilizer on the planet. I highly recommend it.
And what do you personally do?
I do a lot of weight training and hiking, and in the winter, I'll ski. In the summer, I'll swim. I love playing outside.
Yeah, that's great. What's your advice for something that people can do to instantly create stronger, healthier, better relationships?
Tell the truth. And that involves actually getting really clear with what's most important to you. So
Mhm.
telling the truth is not that, like, well, to tell you the truth, I really dislike this about you. That's actually not telling the truth. That's you being a jerk. Telling the truth is like, here's what's really important to me. Can we see more of that in the relationship? So asking for your needs, telling the truth, that's what I'm talking about.
What's a mindset that people need to let go of?
Poor me. Everybody's got something. Everybody struggles. You will too. And getting yourself out of a poor me mindset is probably the number one thing, because poor me keeps you just in that marinating place.
Mhm.
Like, whew, this stinks. I can't believe this happened. And now what do I want to do about it? Will always move you forward.
Yeah. What would you say to the listener who is hearing poor me and they think that doesn't resonate with me? Like they think they're not that type of person.
That's awesome. Good for them.
Are there people out there that don't really have any sort of victim mindset like that? That
I think
reality?
I think there are some. I think, again, just in general, anytime you talk to me, I'm always going to try and take a balanced perspective.
Mhm.
So letting yourself feel bad for something that's happening in your world or to you, like, that's totally reasonable. And then the next question is, how do you want to move forward? What type of person do you want to be in the world, and how can you return again to those values and act out those values so that you are closer to the person that you want to be?
What's a question that people should ask themselves more often?
How am I doing? How am I doing in the world? I'm cheating, and I'm gonna take a put a second answer in here too. um and am I moving towards the type of life that I want?
Okay. I would love for you to just share what you're working on.
Absolutely. So right now I'm in the middle of a huge change, and I am moving to Montana.
So exciting.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So my husband's work is taking us up there, but after 25 years in-person therapy business in Colorado, I'm going to be moving to all telehealth up in Montana until I figure out an office up there. Yeah, so I'm doing a huge business change, and I did a whole business rebrand. My new name is the Sensible Psychologist, which one of my friends at a women's business group started calling me, and I was like, that kind of fits.
Yeah.
And so now everything's under one roof. So my corporate work, my consulting work, and my therapy work is all under the Sensible Psychologist, and I can go all across the nation. It's really cool. Yeah.
Amazing. Before we wrap up, I would love to just ask, like, what What's on the horizon for you? What are you working on? What are some of your projects? Like what's exciting for you?
I'm really looking to reach more people at a time. So I am actually doing a lot more of the speaking and consulting work because it's just so much fun. And there's great psychology information out there. Why not be distributing that to more people? So that's a big piece of my focus.
What's the one thing that you hope listeners take away from our conversation today?
That they have more power and agency in creating their lives than maybe they've sometimes been giving themselves credit for. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to sometimes have better days and worse days. That's actually normal. Success is not, starting low, ending high, and then keeping that way. It's more like being in a rhythm that works and that works for you. Life is meant to be enjoyed. So let's help each other. Let's help ourselves and each other do that.
Great. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Carrie, for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show again.
Thank you, Anne. It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.